I spent 47 years at Abilene College teaching students history. For 47 years, I told stories of the past, analyzed events, and challenged young minds to consider how the actions of individuals change the fate of nations. But it wasn't until I was 74 that I truly realized that history is more than just the pages of a textbook. History is what happens inside every family, behind closed doors, among those closest to you. The keys to the house on Willow Street rested in my palm with a cool weight. A one-story cottage with a white picket fence, a veranda, and a small garden. No big deal to most people. But for me, Ambrose Hemfield, this house was the fulfillment of a dream I'd been working toward all my life. "That's it, Mr. Hemfield." The realtor named Dahlia handed me a folder of papers. "The house is officially yours. Congratulations on your purchase." I clenched the keys in my fist so hard that the metal dug into my skin. 50 years of frugality, giving up traveling, expensive things, even a new car, all for this moment. My late Elizabeth dreamed of a house like this, but she didn't live to see this day. 5 years had passed since her death, and every day I felt the emptiness in the place where her presence used to be. "Thank you," I smiled, feeling an unaccustomed lightness. "I hope the neighbors aren't too noisy." "The neighborhood is quiet, mostly families and older couples. Your neighbor on the right is Mrs. Crawford, retired, former lawyer. On the left is the Parker family. He works remotely. She takes care of the kids. 2 twin boys, about 7 years old but quite well-mannered." I nodded, no longer listening. My gaze slid through the rooms, a spacious living room with a fireplace, a bright kitchen, 2 bedrooms, a study where my library would fit. It was exactly as Elizabeth and I had once planned it. "I'll be fine on my own, thank you." I thanked Dahlia when she offered to help with the move. My son and his wife had promised to come over and help me unpack. The realtor left, and I was alone in the empty house, listening to the sounds of the house, the creaking floorboards, the light hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the antique clock I'd first hung in the living room. Elizabeth and I had gotten it as a wedding gift from her parents, a relic that had survived 52 years of marriage with us. The phone rang, snapping me out of my reverie. "Dad, we're leaving." Randall's voice sounded impatient. "Nancy took the day off to help you with your things. Ashton's coming after school too." "Thanks, son," I smiled involuntarily. Randall and I had always had a complicated relationship. He'd been withdrawn as a child, preferring computer games to books. And in high school, he'd openly rebelled against my attempts to instill in him a love of history and literature. Elizabeth thought I was being too hard on him, demanding too much. Perhaps she was right. By noon, the furniture truck pulled up, followed by Randall's black SUV. My son got out of the car first, tall, balding, wearing a strict gray suit. The years had made him look even more like me, the same heavy brow, the same stubborn chin. Only his eyes are different, restless, as if he's constantly comparing himself to someone else and not satisfied with the result. "Sheva, you look great, Dad." Randall hugged me awkwardly. "How's your lower back? Dr. Hammond said you need to watch your exercise." "Since when do you talk to my doctor?" I frowned. "Just taking care of you." He shrugged. "After Mom died, you stopped taking care of your health." Nancy, my sister-in-law, a slender blonde in an immaculate white suit, stepped out of the car. The heels of her shoes clattered down the walkway to the house. In 20 years of marriage to Randall, she had never once called me Daddy or Father, always only Ambrose or Mr. Hemfield. "What a pretty little house," she exclaimed with feigned delight as she looked around. "So cozy, and the garden is marvelous. How much did you pay for it, Ambrose?" "Enough," I answered dryly. Nancy was always interested in money. How much I earned, how much I saved, how much I had left in my bank account. Elizabeth thought I was being unfair to her. That business interest masked genuine concern. But I could feel the falseness in her smile, see the cold calculation in her eyes. "Grandfather." Ashton, my only grandson, jumped out of the car and gave me a really big hug. At 18, he was a carbon copy of Randall as a young man, but he inherited his character from Elizabeth. Soft, sensitive, with a love of books and art. "What a great house. Will you have your own library?" His eyes lit up. "Can I come here to study? It's impossible to concentrate in the dormitory." "Of course, my boy," I ruffled his hair. "Your grandmother would be happy to have you use her books." Nancy pressed her lips together. Ashton, don't tire your grandfather. Better help your father unload the car. The next few hours passed in a hectic pace of arranging furniture, unpacking boxes, arguing about where the sofa should go and how to hang the pictures. Nancy insisted on getting rid of the junk and updating the interior, and Randall encouraged her. But I was adamant. Every single thing in my house had its own story, its own value, especially the mahogany chess table where Elizabeth and I had spent thousands of evenings. For God's sake, Ambrose, Nancy rolled her eyes when I insisted that the table stand by the living room window. This junk is taking up so much space. Who's going to play with you now? I will, Ashton said quietly, and I squeezed his shoulder gratefully. By evening, the bulk of the work was done. Nancy opened the bottle of champagne they had brought with them. Here's to the new house, she proclaimed, raising her glass, and to a new chapter in Ambrose's life. We clinked glasses. Randall and Nancy exchanged quick glances, and something in the expression on their faces made me wary. But the moment passed, and soon they were talking about how wonderfully settled I was, how great it was that the house was one story. At your age, stairs are an unnecessary risk, and how they would be visiting me often. In fact, Dad, Randall coughed, Nancy and I were thinking, maybe you should appoint someone to be your proxy. You know, in case something happens, someone who can handle the finances. Sure, I'm perfectly capable of handling my own affairs, I said. And if something happens, or as you put it, I have a will. Of course, Dad, of course. Randall held up his hand in a conciliatory gesture. We're just worried about you. Nancy glanced at him, then smiled strangely. We only want to help, Ambrose. At your age, a lot of people are already... At my age, a lot of people are still teaching at universities and writing books, I interrupted. They don't need guardians. Dinner passed in a tense atmosphere. Soon Randall said they had to leave. Tomorrow was a work day and the drive home was almost an hour. Ashton asked permission to stay, but Nancy insisted he go with them. You have class tomorrow too, and Grandpa needs to rest. When they left, I sank into the chair with relief. A sudden knock on the door made me wince. An older woman with short-cropped silver hair and shrewd gray eyes stood on the threshold. Verity Crawford, she introduced herself, extending her hand. Your neighbor on the right. Thought I'd stop by and meet you. Ambrose Hemfield, I shook her dry but firm hand. Come in, Mrs. Crawford. Sorry about the mess. Just moved in. Shemano, call me Verity, she walked into the living room, looking around the room carefully. I saw your family leaving. Nice car. Does your son have a successful business? He works for an insurance company, I replied, offering her tea, and his wife is a realtor. Verity nodded, accepting the cup. I was a lawyer, she said. I specialized in real estate and probate law. 40 years of practice taught me how to read people and see their true motives. She paused, looking me straight in the eye. And I have to say, Mr. Hemfield, your sister-in-law reminds me of the type of client I've always tried to stay away from. I chuckled, appreciating her directness. You're very observant, Verity. Nancy is a complicated person. People rarely change, Verity sipped her tea. Nearest hurried on, especially people who are used to getting what they want at any cost. We talked for another hour or so. Verity told me about the neighborhood, about her neighbors, about the best stores and cafes nearby. But what interested me most was her legal experience. I didn't ask directly about wills and powers of attorney. The memories of the conversation with Randall and Nancy were too fresh, but she seemed to read my mind. You know, Ambrose, she said before she left, if you ever need legal advice, especially about property, I'm always happy to help. Free of charge, neighborly. When Verity left, I sat in silence for a long time, staring at the chess table. Elizabeth often said that life was like a game of chess. You had to calculate your moves ahead of time and be ready for your opponent's unexpected maneuvers. I had laughed at her comparison at the time. Now, remembering the greedy gleam in Nancy's eyes as she looked around the house, Randall's persistent questions about my finances, I realized that the game had already begun. Except my opponents didn't know that I was never an easy target. In 47 years of teaching, I learned to see through the hypocrisy, to recognize the falsity beneath the mask of caring. And if Randall and Nancy were playing a game, I was ready to rise to the challenge. I walked to the window and saw the lights on in the house across the street. My new home, my fortress, my sanctuary at the end of my life. I will not let anyone take it away from me. In 2 weeks in my new home, I had settled in and developed a routine. In the morning, a cup of strong coffee on the veranda, then work in the garden or read in my new study, where I had finally organized all the books into sections. Ancient history, medieval, Renaissance, modern history. The bookshelves, like my mind, were organized chronologically, an order I had maintained my entire academic career. That morning, I searched for my copy of the will. Not out of shrewdness, I just wanted to reread some of the clauses regarding the inheritance of the house. I went through the folders in my desk drawer, checked the safe, even examined boxes I hadn't yet unpacked. The document was nowhere to be found. I remembered exactly holding it in my hands the day I'd moved in, when I'd shown Randall the papers on the house. Along with the will, the same folder contained an insurance policy and a bank statement with an account balance. A sizable sum I'd set aside for unexpected expenses and maybe a little traveling. The entire folder was gone. An unpleasant feeling settled somewhere between my ribs. Of course, I could have simply put the documents in the wrong place or forgotten where I'd left them. At 74, memory sometimes fails even organized people like me. But an inner voice insisted that it wasn't a matter of forgetfulness. A phone call interrupted my search. It was Randall. "Hey, Dad, how's it going?" His voice sounded a little too cheerful. "Nancy and I thought maybe we could stop by this weekend and help with the garden. Nancy found a great landscaper." "Thanks, but I can do it myself," I replied. "By the way, have you seen my file? Remember when I showed you the deeds to the house? I can't find it." A short pause on the other end of the line made me suspicious. "Oh, those papers," Randall finally said. "Yeah, I think I accidentally took them. I wanted to make copies for my archives and forgot to return them." "I'm sorry, Dad. Why would you want copies of my personal papers?" I couldn't hide my annoyance. I had my will, my insurance, my bank statements. "You know," Randall chuckled nervously, "just in case something happens and I don't know where to look. Don't worry, I'll have everything back over the weekend." I wasn't convinced by this explanation, but I decided not to insist over the phone. "Okay, I look forward to seeing you on Saturday," I said dryly and hung up. In the evening, I went out into the garden to plant roses, a hobby Elizabeth had instilled in me many years before. Through the hedge separating my plot from the neighboring one, I spotted Verity pruning lavender bushes. "Good evening, Ambrose," she nodded at me. "How's the place coming along?" "Not bad," I straightened, wiping my hands on my gardening gloves. "But there have been some strange." I told her about the missing documents. Verity frowned, her scissors frozen in the air. "I don't want to alarm you," she said slowly, "but in my practice, such accidents have often proved to be the first step in trying to manipulate the elderly and their assets, especially when significant assets are involved." She put the scissors aside and moved closer to the hedge. "Are you sure your lawyer's copy of the will is up to date? When was the last time you updated it?" That question got me thinking. I had updated the will after Elizabeth died, leaving most of the estate to Randall and Ashton, with some stipulations. But the new house wasn't included. I bought it after the document was drafted. "I think it's worth updating," I admitted. "And check who's named as your trustee in case of incapacity," Verity added. "That's just as important as the will itself." On Saturday, Randall and Nancy arrived as promised, but without Ashton. He has an important college project. Nancy brought furniture catalogs and fabric samples for curtains, though I didn't ask for them. "Your furniture certainly holds a lot of memories, Ambrose." She spread glossy brochures on my kitchen table. "But you'd have to admit it belongs in a museum, not in a modern home." "My furniture fits perfectly in my house," I cut her off. "Randall, did you bring my papers?" My son looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry, Dad. I forgot them at home, but we were just about to talk about it." He sat down across from me with his hands folded on the table, a gesture I always used when I was about to make an important statement, an unconscious imitation that in another situation might have moved me. "Nancy and I consulted with a financial advisor," Randall began. "He thinks that at your age it would make sense to get a joint bank account, so that I can help pay your bills if you start having a hard time." "I don't have a hard time paying my bills," I tried to keep my voice calm, "and I prefer to handle my own finances." Nancy joined the conversation, sitting down next to her husband. Ambrose, it's just a precaution. We can all see how you sometimes forget things, get confused about dates. Like what? I raised an eyebrow. Well, those documents you can't find. She smiled indulgently. Last time you forgot where you left your glasses, even though they were on your head. And for Ashton's birthday, you sent a card a week late. I felt a wave of anger rising inside, but I suppressed it. Elizabeth had always said that in chess, as in life, it was important not to show your emotions to your opponent. If you're concerned, Randall, I said flatly, I can get a medical exam, a full one. My doctor will certify that there is nothing wrong with my mental state. Randall and Nancy exchanged glances. Sure, Dad, Randall said hurriedly. But this isn't about your health, it's about practicality. What if you break your arm or end up in the hospital? Who's going to pay the bills? I have auto pay for regular expenses, I replied, and I'm perfectly capable of calling the bank from the hospital if I need to. Nancy was clearly losing patience. You know what? She stood up. I've had an appraiser come out to look at the house. For insurance purposes. I've already insured the house, I objected. I had it appraised when I bought it. But you must be overpaying, Nancy exclaimed. As a realtor, I know that many elderly people fall victim to unscrupulous insurance agents. Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. A young man stood on the doorstep with a clipboard and measuring tape. Brian Courtney, the appraiser, he introduced himself. Mrs. Hemfield invited me in. I wanted to object, but Nancy was already leading him through the rooms, pointing out the trouble spots that were lowering the value of the property. Randall, meanwhile, continued to convince me of the need for a joint account. And also, Dad, he said, lowering his voice, we thought you should sign a power of attorney in case something happens, so I can make decisions about your health and your assets. I felt the blood drain from my face. Slowly, the pieces of the puzzle came together. I'll think about it, I said, standing up. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to take my medicine. I went into the bathroom and closed the door, trying to collect my thoughts. Through the window, I could see Brian taking pictures of my house from the outside, and Nancy was animatedly explaining something to him, pointing to the roof and garden. When I returned, the surveyor had already left and Nancy was talking to someone on the phone in the garden. Randall was going through the drawers of my desk. What are you doing? I asked from the threshold of the study. He flinched and turned around, smiling guiltily. Looking for my checkbook, he said. Nancy wants to show you how you can automate payments. I already told you that I have auto payments set up, I replied icily. And I'd rather you didn't go through my stuff without asking. Randall looked hurt. God, Dad, I'm just trying to help. You've been getting so suspicious lately. The rest of the day passed in a tense atmosphere. Nancy insisted on making lunch, even though I wasn't hungry. She fussed in the kitchen, picking out flaws in my appliances, suggesting that I replace outdated appliances. Awesome. And those cabinets, Ambrose, she shook her head. That design went out of style 20 years ago. I know a great contractor who could update everything in a couple weeks. I like my kitchen the way it is, I replied. But consider reselling it, Nancy insisted. A modern kitchen can increase the value of a house by 15 to 20%. I don't plan to sell the house, I retorted. Never. After lunch, I cited fatigue, hinting that it was time for them to leave. Randall reminded me of the documents and promised to bring them next time. Before he left, he brought up the power of attorney and the joint account one more time. Just think about it, Dad, he said. Nancy and I just want you to be comfortable and safe. When they finally drove away, I sank into the chair without energy. Half an hour later, the doorbell rang. It was Ashton, excited and a little scared. Grandpa, can I come in? He looked around as if he was afraid he was being watched. I need to talk to you. I let my grandson in and we went into the kitchen. I made tea, a ritual that always calmed me in difficult times. Grandpa, Ashton spoke softly, nervously twirling the cup in his hands. I overheard Mom and Dad talking about you and the house. About what exactly? I tried to keep my voice casual. They think you're, he hesitated for words, that you can't take care of yourself anymore. Mom said it would be better if you moved to a place where professionals could take care of you. And the house. They want to sell it. I squeezed the handle of the cup so hard my knuckles turned white. When did you hear that? Last night. Ashton looked unhappy. No, they don't know that I know. Grandpa, they even made a list of nursing homes. Mom's already contacted some Golden Sunset or something. Golden Years. I remembered the brochure Nancy had accidentally left on the coffee table the last time she visited, a luxury nursing home on the outskirts of Abilene. Yes, that's right, Ashton nodded. They said they had to get you to sign some papers first. Power of attorney? I didn't quite understand the legal part. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions inside me. Betrayal is a bitter word, especially when it comes to your own son. But the facts spoke for themselves. The missing documents, the persistent talk of a joint account in power of attorney, the appraisal of the house for insurance. Thanks for telling me, Ashton. I put my hand on my grandson's shoulder. It explains a lot. What are you going to do? I could see the worry in his eyes. I don't know yet, I admitted, but don't worry, I won't let them manipulate me. When Ashton left, I sat in the darkness of the living room, staring at the chessboard. Elizabeth always said, if you find yourself in a difficult position, don't panic. Assess the situation, find your opponent's weaknesses, and develop a plan. The next morning, I knocked on Verity's door. She didn't seem surprised by my early visit. Your fears were justified, I said, as she offered me coffee on her veranda. My son and his wife plan to put me in a nursing home and sell my house. Verity shook her head, but there was no surprise in her look. Unfortunately, these situations are not uncommon, she said, especially with valuable real estate and elderly parents living alone. What is your advice? I asked, feeling the old teacher's pride give way to the need to recognize that I needed help. First and foremost, protect your assets, Verity said clearly, as if she were reading out paragraphs of a lawsuit. Update your will, verify powers of attorney, perhaps set up a trust, and most importantly, document your legal capacity. Capacity? If they try to get custody of you, they'll have to prove that you're incapable of making rational decisions, Verity explained. A medical examination proving your mental clarity would be a strong argument against that. I nodded, feeling a plan forming in my head. And another thing, Ambrose, Verity lowered her voice even though we were alone. If your son did take important documents, including the will, it may be more than just forgetfulness. He could have been studying them, looking for loopholes or even forged something. I grew cold at the thought. I don't want to accuse him without proof, Verity shook her head. But in my practice, I've seen children forge their parents' signatures on deeds of gift, power of attorney, and other documents. I remembered Randall's handwriting, so similar to mine that in college he'd sometimes signed field trip permits for me. It had seemed like an innocent prank at the time. Now, what do I do? I asked, feeling my resolve growing inside. The first thing you should do is change the locks, Verity said. Then check all your accounts, especially if Randall has access to your bank records, and find a good lawyer who specializes in protecting the rights of the elderly. I nodded, making mental notes. I know a notary public, Gerald Lindsay. We worked together in college. I think he might be able to help. Great, Verity nodded approvingly. And Ambrose, be careful. Don't show that you suspect anything. As long as they think you don't know anything, you have the advantage. On the drive home, I reflected on my son's betrayal. The pain of realizing that a family man was plotting to deprive me of my freedom and home was almost physical. But I couldn't allow myself to wallow in grief and resentment. What I needed now was a clear head and a cold calculation. Upon entering the house, I went straight to the safe hidden behind a painting in the study. Randall didn't know it existed. I'd installed it after I'd moved in. It held some valuable papers, some cash, and a thumb drive with electronic copies of important documents. An insurance policy I'd created a long time ago, not trusting digital storage completely. I pulled out the thumb drive and turned on the computer. A copy of the will was there, albeit outdated. There were also copies of bank statements, the purchase agreement for the house, and medical records with the results of my last checkup 6 months ago. On the computer screen, I drew up a plan of action. Change the locks, visit the bank, and check all the accounts, update the will, get a medical exam, Discuss with Gerald the possibility of setting up a trust that would protect the house from being sold. And most importantly, to do all of this in secret without arousing suspicion from Randall and Nancy. I couldn't believe I had to defend myself against my own son, the man I'd raised, the man I'd read books to before bed, the man whose broken knees I'd bandaged, the man I'd taught to play chess. But the facts spoke for themselves, and I had always been a man who trusted facts more than emotions. This game was just beginning, and I wasn't going to lose without a fight. After all, I had always been a good strategist. It was time to use that skill not to analyze historical battles, but to defend my own life and home. For 2 weeks, I methodically executed my plan. Changed the locks, assuring the hired locksmith that I had simply lost my keys. I visited the bank and checked my accounts. Luckily, there were no unauthorized transactions. Met with Gerald Lindsay, who, despite his 79 years, retained a clear mind and a professional attitude. He helped me draft a new will and power of attorney, naming Verity Crawford, not Nancy or Randall, as trustee. "Are you sure, Ambrose?" Gerald asked, adjusting his thin-rimmed glasses. "Yeah, Ron. You've only known her for a month." "She's a former probate lawyer," I explained, "and the only person I trust right now." Gerald nodded. He knew all too well how often children betrayed their parents for an inheritance. I also underwent a full medical examination with Dr. Harris, the new doctor I'd chosen without Randall's input. The results confirmed what I already knew. I was in excellent physical and mental shape for my age. Dr. Harris even joked that my brain functioned better than many of her 50-year-old patients. I kept all my legal documents, copies of my new will and power of attorney in Gerald's safe, and duplicates in a stash behind the bookcase. I was prepared for Randall and Nancy to take some action, but I didn't expect them to dare to act so quickly and brazenly. Saturday morning, as I was eating breakfast on the porch, Randall's familiar black SUV pulled up to the house. His son got out of the car in a business suit, which was odd for a day off. Nancy, elegant as ever, held a leather folder. They were followed by an unfamiliar, middle-aged man with a neat beard. "Good morning, Dad." Randall smiled strainedly. "We thought it had been a while." "It's only been 2 weeks, I remarked, inviting them into the house. "Who is your companion?" "This is Mr. Pratt," Nancy introduced, "the manager of the Golden Years residence. We thought you might be interested in learning more about the possibilities." I inwardly tensed but kept a calm expression on my face. Randall looked nervous, avoiding my gaze. Nancy, on the other hand, exuded fake friendliness, bustling around the kitchen, making coffee, offering cookies they'd brought with them. Mr. Pratt, a lean man with measured movements and a professional smile, spread glossy brochures on the table with pictures of the Golden Years, spacious hallways, cozy rooms, manicured gardens. "Our residence offers a full range of services," he began his memorized speech. "From independent living to round-the-clock care. We have a swimming pool, a library, a movie room. There are cultural events every week, concerts, lectures, creative workshops." I listened in silence, studying not so much the brochures as the faces of my guests. Randall tapped his fingers nervously on the table, a gesture he'd adopted from me, and which always betrayed his excitement. Nancy, on the other hand, exuded cold determination. "We've already made a reservation for you, Ambrose," she said when Mr. Pratt had finished his presentation. "A suite with a private balcony overlooking the garden. You'll be able to bring some of your personal belongings, books, photographs." "Booked?" I raised an eyebrow. "I don't remember asking you to do that." "We thought it would be a nice surprise." Randall smiled strainedly. "Do you know how hard it is to get a spot in the Golden Years? There's a waiting list months long." "We bailed you out," Nancy added. "5,000. The apartment will be ready for occupancy in 2 weeks." I leaned back in my chair, looking at them over my glasses. "And how do you suppose I'm going to live in this paradise? The cost of living there must be considerable." Mr. Pratt coughed. "Our basic services will cost $6,000 a month," he said, "plus an additional charge for specialized care if needed." $72,000 a year." I shook my head slowly. "My pension wouldn't even cover half of that." "We've taken care of that too." Nancy opened a leather folder and pulled out some documents. "If you sell the house, the proceeds will be enough for many years of comfortable living in the residence." This is it, I thought. The moment of truth. Sell the house? I acted puzzled. But I just bought it. It was an investment of all my savings. And a very good investment, Dad, Randall said. The real estate market is booming. Nancy's already consulted with her colleagues. Your house could sell for 20% more than you paid for it. Minus the realtor's commission, of course, Nancy added with a smile. But I'm willing to lower my percentage, given the family circumstances. I felt a wave of anger rising inside me, but I held it back. It wasn't time to show my true feelings yet. I don't think selling the house is a good idea, I said calmly. I'm happy here. I have a garden, neighbors I've made friends with. Why would I want to move to an institution, even one with a pool and a movie theater? Randall and Nancy exchanged glances. Mr. Pratt tactfully averted his eyes, pretending to study his brochures. Dad, we're worried about you, Randall leaned toward me. You live alone, unsupervised. What if you fall, or forget to turn off the gas, or you can't take your meds on time? I don't take any medication except vitamins, I reminded myself, and I have no memory or coordination problems. That's what you think, Ambrose. Nancy shook her head with feigned sympathy. But Randall and I have noticed that you've been getting more absent-minded. You're forgetting where you put things, getting confused about dates. I'm a history professor, I said dryly. Dates are my specialty. Former professor, Nancy clarified. You've been retired for 4 years. 3 years, I corrected. And my memory's perfectly fine. Thank you for your concern. Nancy sighed impatiently. Look, Ambrose, let's be frank. You've reached an age when it's becoming dangerous to live alone. At golden years, you'll be cared for by professionals. You'll be able to socialize with your peers, participate in interesting activities, not have to think about domestic problems. Isn't that better than being alone in a big empty house? My house is not empty, I objected. It's full of memories, books, things I love. Things, Nancy snorted. Things are no substitute for human companionship, for caring. If you're so concerned about my loneliness, I said, looking at my son, why don't you visit me more often? Or Ashton? My grandson likes to spend time with me. Randall wrinkled his nose. We have work, Dad. Ashton has school. We can't come over every day to make sure you're okay. I don't ask for that, I said. I'm doing fine on my own. Nancy tapped her fingernails irritably on the table. Ambrose, you don't understand the gravity of the situation. Randall and I can see how you are degenerate. It's normal at your age, but it needs to be addressed. Degenerating? I raised my eyebrows. That's a strong statement. Do you have a medical degree, Nancy? Don't be sarcastic, she raised her voice sharply. Pourtant, we all know what's going on. You're becoming a liability, and the best solution is professional care in a specialized facility. Nancy! Randall cast a warning glance at his wife, but the mask of benevolence had already fallen. Nancy leaned forward, her eyes narrowed. Let's be honest, she said coldly. You've lived your life. Now it's your turn to think about the next generation. This house is a waste of resources. It should be sold and the money invested wisely. In your pocket? I asked calmly. For your family's future, she exclaimed. Ashton's going to graduate school soon, and it's expensive. Randall and I want to start our own business, and we need startup capital. And my house is supposed to be the source of that capital? I shook my head. Funny, I thought I bought it for myself. Randall stepped in, trying to smooth things over. Dad, no one is going to take the house away from you. We're just suggesting a better use of the assets. You'll get a comfortable residence, and the remaining money from the sale of the house will generate income that we can all enjoy. All of us, I grinned. Or just you and Nancy. We're your family, Randall looked hurt. Marley, it's only natural that we care about our financial well-being. Our own, I clarified. Nancy stood up abruptly. Enough of this farce, she said. We have all the necessary documents. Either you sign them voluntarily, or we'll have to go to court to have you declared incompetent. Mr. Pratt seemed stunned by this turn of conversation. He began to gather his pamphlets, muttering something about having to make a phone call. Stay, Mr. Pratt, I said. I was wondering how often you witness family scenes like this. The residence manager coughed awkwardly. Yeah, prefer not to comment. It's a delicate matter. I understand, I nodded. Then enlighten me on another matter. If I move to the golden years, do I have to sell my house? Mr. Pratt blinked. No, of course you don't. Many of our residents keep their properties, renting them out for extra income. Some leave their homes to their children but continue to be formal owners. Nancy gave him a searing look. Mr. Pratt, we have discussed this matter, she said through gritted teeth. In Mr. Hemfield's case, selling the house is the only way to finance his stay in your facility. I'm just answering the question. The superintendent shrugged. I turned to Nancy. So, you lied. Selling the house isn't necessary to move into the residence. We didn't lie, Randall objected. It's just that in your case, with your limited finances. Limited? I laughed. Son, you have no idea how much money I have, and you won't know as long as I'm alive. Nancy was losing her patience. That's enough. She pulled out a file and threw it on the table. Here's the deed to the house. Here's a power of attorney authorizing Randall to act on your behalf in all legal and financial matters. Sign it and we'll settle the move peacefully. I took the documents slowly, pretending to scrutinize them. In fact, a quick glance was enough for me to realize they wanted not just to sell the house, but to gain control of all my assets. And if I refuse? I asked, looking up. Then, Nancy leaned across the table to me, we'll go to court. We have witnesses to your absent-mindedness, your forgetfulness. Your primary care physician, Dr. Hammond, will testify that you're at high risk for dementia at your age. You bribed my doctor. I was genuinely surprised. Not bribed, but consulted. Nancy straightened up. Like caring family members. And he agrees that you need supervision. I looked at her with a new understanding. Nancy didn't just want my house. She'd planned this operation long and carefully, preparing the ground, gathering evidence of my incapacity. What did Ashton think about it? I asked, shifting my gaze to my son. Randall averted his eyes. Ashton is young, and he doesn't understand the complexities of life. He's attached to you, but he doesn't see the big picture. The full picture? I raised my eyebrows. You mean like his parents trying to take the house away from his grandfather and locking the old man in a nursing home? Don't be dramatic, Dad, Randall grumbled. The Golden Years isn't a prison. It's a nice place with lots of amenities. Achim. And bars on the windows, I noted, pointing to a picture in the brochure that showed decorative but obviously sturdy window bars. That's for security, Mr. Pratt interjected. Some of our residents have episodes of disorientation. I realized it was time to end this farce. They came in with a plan, and they weren't going to back down. If I refused to sign the papers now, they'd find another way. Perhaps a harsher one, I sighed, pretending to give up. Okay, I said, slumping my shoulders. If you insist, I'll sign. But I need time to get ready to move. Unpack. Decide what to take with me. Nancy squinted incredulously, but Randall brightened. Sure, Dad. Take all the time you need. We'll help with packing, transportation. 2 weeks, Nancy cut her off. No more than that. Otherwise, we'll lose the reservation. 2 weeks, I agreed. More than enough. I picked up the pen and signed the paperwork, making sure it was different from my usual signature, a little more shaky, less confident. A little trick that might come in handy later if I had to challenge the authenticity of the signature. Nancy snatched up the papers as soon as the ink was dry. Now that's a reasonable solution, she said with a triumphant smile. Don't worry, Ambrose, you won't regret it. You'll be much better off in the Golden Years than here alone. If you need anything, Dad, just say the word. Randall put his hand on my shoulder. Nancy and I will organize everything. The move will be smooth, I promise. I nodded, not trusting my voice. The rage I'd been holding back the entire conversation threatened to burst out. Mr. Pratt looked uncomfortable, but the professional mask had returned to his face. I look forward to welcoming you to our residence, Mr. Hemfield, he said, shaking my hand. I'm sure you'll settle in quickly and make new friends. When they had gone, I sat still for a long time, looking out of the window. Then I got up slowly and went to the phone. I needed to call Verity and Gerald. Time to put Plan B into action. I no longer doubted my son's betrayal. His words, his looks, everything said he was completely under Nancy's influence. He may have felt remorse in his heart, but not remorse strong enough to stand up to his wife and turn down the opportunity to make a quick buck at my expense. The pain of betrayal was acute, but I couldn't let myself drown in self-pity. What I needed now was a clear head, I turned back to the chessboard that stood on the table by the window. Nancy and Randall had made their move. Now it was my turn, and I wasn't going to lose this game. They thought they were dealing with a helpless old man. They were about to find out how wrong they were. As soon as Randall's black SUV was around the corner, I headed toward Verity's house. My neighbor, as if anticipating my visit, was already waiting on the porch with 2 cups of hot tea. "I could tell by the look on your face that you'd had a difficult conversation," she said, gesturing for me to sit in the wicker chair. I told her about Randall and Nancy's visit with the administrator of the Golden Years, about the attempts to declare me incompetent, about the signed deed to the house. "You signed it?" Verity frowned. "Oh, a signature that wouldn't stand up to an expert's scrutiny." I allowed myself a small smile. "And yes, I made copies of all the documents before I handed them over." Verity nodded approvingly. "You're thoughtful. That's good. But now we need to act fast. If they file the deed of gift for registration, we have 2 weeks before I move into the nursing home." I sipped my tea. Nancy had insisted on that deadline. "I guess they won't register the papers until they're sure I'm really leaving. They're afraid of scaring me off." "That's a reasonable assumption," Verity agreed, "but I wouldn't risk it. We need to contact Gerald immediately." An hour later, we were sitting in Gerald Lindsay's small but elegant office. Despite his retirement age, my old friend retained his notary license and consulted on special cases, such as mine. "I'm impressed with your foresight, Ambrose," Gerald said, looking over the documents I'd brought. "A new will, a power of attorney in Mrs. Crawford's name, a medical report on your capacity. You've done your homework." "I'm a historian, Gerald," I shrugged. "We're always looking at the background of events, looking for patterns. Randall and Nancy's behavior in recent months had created a pattern. I simply drew logical conclusions. And now we're dealing with fraud and possible forgery." Gerald took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "The deed of gift you signed is probably invalid, given the circumstances. But if they try to register it, they won't," I assured him. "I have a plan." I outlined my thoughts. Verity and Gerald listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, the room was silent. "It's risky," Verity finally said. "But it could work, especially if we set up a trust fund to protect the house." "That's exactly what I was thinking," I nodded. "A trust administered by an independent trustee would protect my assets from Randall and Nancy's claims, even if they somehow got me declared incompetent." Gerald pulled a file folder from his desk drawer. "I prepared the preliminary paperwork for the irrevocable trust after our last meeting," he said. "I had a hunch they might be needed." We spent the next 2 hours discussing the legal details. Gerald drafted new documents, including an application to invalidate the gift on the grounds of psychological duress and misrepresentation. Verity, with her expertise in probate law, suggested amendments and additions. "Now we need proof of their intentions," she said when the basic documents were ready. Section, recordings of conversations, witness statements, something that would prove pressure from them. "Ashton," I nodded confidently, "my grandson heard their plans. He could confirm that they'd discussed getting rid of me and getting the house. Witnessing a family member against other family members can be problematic," Gerald observed. "But it's better than nothing." "Anything else?" I wondered. "Mr. Pratt from the Golden Years. He heard Nancy threatening to sue me if I didn't sign the papers. Saw her aggressive behavior." "Okay," Verity was making notes in her notebook. "What about taping conversations? It's legal in the state as long as one party knows about the recording." "I have a tape recorder," I said. "It's old-fashioned, but it's reliable, and I can set up a camera in the living room where we usually have our family councils." Gerald nodded. "The recordings would be strong evidence, especially if you can capture them discussing their plans for your house and money." After meeting with Gerald, Verity and I stopped by an electronics store where we bought a state-of-the-art voice recorder with plenty of memory and a discreet camera that could be hidden among the books in the closet. "I feel like a spy," I admitted as we drove home. "I never thought I'd be secretly recording my own son." "It's self-defense, Ambrose," Verity said softly. "They were the first to break the trust. You're just protecting yourself and your property." "Ashton called me this evening." His grandson's voice sounded strained. "Grandpa, your parents say you've agreed to move into a nursing home. Is that true?" "Come over tomorrow," I said, lowering my voice to a whisper. I'll explain everything. But don't tell anyone you're coming to see me. The next day, Ashton arrived early in the morning, excited and confused. I led him into the garden, away from the house, where we could talk freely. I signed the papers under duress, I explained as we sat down on a garden bench. But I have a plan, and I need your help. I told my grandson the abbreviated version of the situation, that Randall and Nancy were trying to appropriate my house and put me in a nursing home against my will, and that I was going to confront them legally. Are they really doing this? Ashton looked stunned, despite having informed me of their plans himself earlier. I was hoping I just misunderstood their conversation. Unfortunately, you got it right. I put a hand on his shoulder. I need you to be my eyes and ears, Ashton. Record everything they say about me, about the house, about their plans. You can do it on your phone. Spying on my own parents? He swallowed nervously. It's complicated, Grandpa. I understand, I nodded, and I don't want you to betray them. Just gather information that will help me protect myself. After all, you came to me because you were worried. Ashton looked at his hands for a long moment, then nodded decisively. Good, I'll help. They're not doing the right thing. It's not fair to you. I hugged my grandson, feeling both proud of his moral compass and bitter at having to involve him in a family conflict. In the days that followed, I actively prepared to carry out my plan. I set up the camera in a bookcase, pointing it toward the living room where Randall and Nancy and I usually had our conversations. Hid the recorders in different parts of the house, transferred some of the money to a new account Randall didn't know about, and updated all the passwords. At the same time, I put on a show for my son and daughter-in-law. When they called, I spoke in a tired, depressed voice. I complained of memory problems, of difficulty with everyday tasks. I told them I had started packing for the move. I'm glad you've made this decision, Dad. Randall's voice sounded almost genuinely concerned. You'll be better off under the care of professionals. You're probably right, I sighed into the phone. This house is too big for me alone, and the stairs are becoming a problem. But you have a one-story house, Randall pointed out. Shinar? Oh yeah, I mumbled. I forgot. You see, my memory is already failing me. A week after I signed the deed of gift, Randall and Nancy arrived to help with the packing. I met them in my bathrobe and slippers, with my hair deliberately disheveled. Come in. Come in. I fussily ushered them into the living room, where the recorder and camera were already turned on. I'd only just gotten up. The days are blending into one, you know. Nancy looked around the room with poorly concealed satisfaction. Her gaze slid over the furniture, the paintings, the books. Mentally, she was already disposing of these possessions. How's the packing going, Ambrose? She asked, taking a seat on the sofa. We thought you might need some help selecting things for the move. Yes, of course. I pretended to try to remember. I started with books or clothes. I don't remember. Randall and Nancy exchanged glances. I told you, Nancy said quietly. His condition is getting worse. Maybe we should postpone the move until later, Randall suggested, lowering his voice but loud enough for the recorder to pick up. We'll see how it goes today, Nancy replied. Then louder, turning to me. Let's start with the essentials. You'll have a small room in the residence, so we need to pick out only the really important things. I nodded with an absent look. Yes, of course. But what about the rest? Don't worry about that, Nancy smiled. We'll take care of everything. Some of it we can sell, some of it we can give to charity. And the chess table? I pointed to the mahogany table. I cherish it as a memento. It's too bulky for a small room, Nancy said. And who's going to play with you in the residence? There are other activities there, group activities, a TV in the common room. I lowered my head, feigning humility. You're right, dear. Who needs an old table? Why don't you sell it? It's an antique, should bring good money. Nancy is instantly revitalized. Oh, don't worry about it. We'll find a good use for it. All day they went through the house, selecting things for the move, a minimum of personal belongings, a few photographs, a couple of books. Anything of value Nancy marked for herself. Elizabeth's jewelry, the collection of old coins I'd been collecting for decades, antique furniture. What about financial matters? I asked over lunch, trying to play forgetful. I'll need to pay for the residence, right? Yurak, it's already organized, Dad, Randall said quickly. We'll take care of the payment. You have nothing to worry about. Out of my money? I frowned as if trying to grasp a complex concept. Partly, Randall answered evasively, and partly from the sale of the house. But I gave the house to you. I looked at him with feigned surprise. Why would I sell it? Nancy interjected. Ambrose, we've discussed this. It's unsustainable to keep an empty house. Selling it would create a financial cushion for you to live comfortably in the residence for years to come. What if I don't live very long? I asked innocently. Where will the rest of the money go? Randall choked on his water. Dad, don't say that. You'll live a long time. But still, I insisted, looking at them with innocent eyes. Naturally, the money will stay in the family, Nancy replied. But let's not talk about such gloomy things. Of course, I nodded. Just senile curiosity. By the time they left that evening, I had hours of recordings of their conversations among themselves when they thought I couldn't hear. Nancy was openly discussing how much they could get for the house, what furniture they should sell, and what they should keep for their new country home they were planning to buy. Oh, I'll contact an antiques appraiser tomorrow, she told Randall. Some of your father's things are worth a decent amount of money, especially his coin collection and his chess table. Maybe we should leave him the chess table, Randall suggested it. He treasures it so much. Don't be silly, Nancy snorted. He won't even remember the table in a month at the Golden Sunset. He's already got a memory problem. And the table could sell for $5,000 at least. I sent copies of the tapes to Verity and Gerald. The next day, the three of us met to discuss how to proceed. There's enough evidence, Gerald said after listening to the tapes. We can file a petition to invalidate the gift and start the lawsuit now. No, I shook my head. I want them to show their cards completely. Let them think they've won, that I'm completely at their mercy. It's risky, Ambrose, Verity warned. If they register the deed of gift, they won't be in a hurry, I countered. They're afraid of spooking me, and we've already set up the trust, so even if they somehow get title to the house, it'll be much harder to challenge the trust. Gerald tapped his fingers on the table thoughtfully. What exactly are you planning, Ambrose? I smiled, feeling the excitement of a chess player cornering an opponent. I want them to dig their own hole, a deep one, and I want them to jump into it willingly. I laid out my plan. As I spoke, Verity and Gerald's faces grew more and more surprised. Are you sure you want to go that far? Verity asked when I was finished. Sure, it would be painful for everyone involved, especially Ashton. Ashton is tougher than he looks, I said, and he deserves to know the truth about his parents. Besides, I'm going to take care of his future, regardless of Randall and Nancy. Gerald nodded slowly. I'll help you, Ambrose. Your plan is risky, but it could work. And admittedly, I like the idea of teaching people who try to take advantage of elderly relatives a lesson. Then it's settled, I straightened up, feeling energized. Operation Checkmate. In the days that followed, I continued to play the role of the disoriented old man, calling Randall at odd hours with incoherent questions, complained to Nancy about problems managing finances, asked them to help with everyday tasks he used to do without difficulty. I'm getting worse, I said in a shaky voice over the phone. Sometimes I forget where I am. Yesterday I was looking for Elizabeth all over the house. Oh, God, Randall sounded worried, and for a moment I almost believed it was genuine. Dad, maybe we should speed up your move. You shouldn't have to live alone like this. No, I'll be fine before the date, I objected hastily. It's just that sometimes there are moments. At the same time, I was secretly meeting with Gerald and Verity, preparing the legal basis for my plan. We drew up a new will, set up a trust where we transferred ownership of the house and most of my assets, and prepared a petition to invalidate the gift. Ashton kept up his part of the plan, recording my parents' conversations. Thanks to him, we learned that Randall and Nancy had already contacted a potential buyer for my house, discussing a preliminary price and planning a deal as soon as I moved into the golden years. We have to act fast, Nancy said on one of the recordings, before the old man changes his mind or says too much to the neighbors. He won't change his mind, Randall objected. You can see his condition is getting worse every day. Soon he won't even remember he had a house. And yet, Nancy insisted, the sooner we finalize the golden years deal, and sell the house, the better. Ashton handed me this tape with tears in his eyes. Grandpa, I can't believe they're talking about you like that. It's like, it's like you're not a person anymore. I hugged my grandson, feeling a sharp pain for his disappointment in his parents. Greed makes people blind, Ashton. They don't see me. They only see the house, the money, the things they can get. What are you going to do? He asked. When are you going to reveal to them that you know everything? Soon, I promised. Very soon. And I want you to be there when it happens. You have to see the consequences of their actions. That evening, I received a call from Nancy. She sounded excited. Ambrose, we have great news. We've arranged with Golden Years for you to move in 5 days early. This Saturday. Can you believe it? Someone turned the place down, and they're ready to take you in immediately. So soon? I played confused, but I haven't finished packing yet. Don't worry, she interrupted. Saravaapinam, Randall and I will come tomorrow and help with everything. You'll be all set by Saturday. Okay, I sighed with feigned doom. If you think that's best, believe me, Ambrose, you won't regret it. The Golden Years is a beautiful place. You'll love it. I hung up the phone and called Verity and Gerald right away. The time for the final act of our play had come sooner than we'd planned. We had to speed up the preparations. Be ready for tomorrow, Verity said. I think they're going to try to get you to sign some more papers before we move. I'll be ready, I assured her, and they'll get more than they expect. I spent the evening checking the cameras and recorders, rereading the documents Gerald had prepared, mentally rehearsing my speech. It wasn't just a fight for a house or money. It was a fight for my dignity, for the right to decide my own fate. I lay awake long into the night, thinking about the coming confrontation. Not about Randall and Nancy. I had already accepted their betrayal. I thought about Ashton, about how this conflict would affect him. But in the end, I decided that the truth, however bitter, was better than a comfortable lie. My grandson deserved to know who his parents really were. In the morning, I was calm and focused. I set the final traps, checked the recording devices, made sure all the paperwork was in place. When the doorbell rang, I was fully prepared for the final game of this chess game. Randall and Nancy stood on the doorstep, followed by Ashton, looking miserable. I greeted them with a deliberate shuffle of my feet and a slight slouch. Come in, I said slowly, pausing as if I was having trouble forming my thoughts. I'm almost ready, I think. Nancy glanced around the living room, where I had deliberately created a light mess. Scattered things, open boxes, stacks of books. Oh my God, Ambrose, she shook her head with feigned sympathy. You haven't even begun to pack. It's a good thing we're here to help. I tried, I said with a guilty look. But I forget what I've already packed and what I haven't. Yesterday I spent an hour looking for my glasses, and they were… Where were they? On your head, grandfather, Ashton said quietly. Yes, that's right. On my head, I slapped myself on the forehead. See how bad it is? You're right, I can't be alone. Randall and Nancy exchanged glances again, this time triumphant. Their plan was working even better than they had expected. Don't worry, Dad, Randall put his hand on my shoulder. We'll figure it out. The Golden Years will help you with… recover. I hope so. I took a deep breath. You know, sometimes I don't even remember what day of the week it is. And I took my medication twice yesterday. Good thing it was only vitamins. Nancy nodded, not even trying to hide her satisfaction. It's very dangerous, Ambrose. You see, we didn't insist on moving for nothing. At the residence, the nurses will monitor your medication regimen. They set to work packing my personal belongings, sorting my clothes, sorting out my books. I watched them, occasionally interjecting incoherent comments or asking questions that had already been answered. And my chess table? I asked every half hour. Are we taking it? Each time, Nancy patiently explained that there would be no room for a table in the small residence hall room. Each time, I pretended I was hearing this for the first time and chagrinedly agreed. Ashton kept to himself, silently helping to pack my things. When Nancy sent Randall to the store for more boxes and went to make a phone call, my grandson came up to me. Grandpa, it's terrible, he whispered. They contacted some investor yesterday about the house, and they were talking about getting a loan. I nodded, keeping a serene expression on my face in case Nancy came back. Did you write it down? Yes, Ashton discreetly handed me the flash drive. Oh, and Mom called the bank on your behalf. She used some kind of power of attorney, trying to get the account balance. That was news. I didn't expect them to act so quickly. Thank you. I tucked the flash drive into my robe pocket. Hang in there a little longer. It'll all be over soon. When Nancy returned, she was unusually animated. She was packing vigorously, glancing at her watch. Is something wrong, dear? I asked innocently. You look worried. Everything's fine, Ambrose, she smiled. We just have a lot to do today. We have to get you ready to move and get to the bank before it closes. The bank? I frowned. Why? Remember when we talked about putting your accounts under Randall's management so he could help pay the residents' bills? Oh, yes, I nodded absently. The accounts, of course. But can't I manage my own money? In your condition, Ambrose, Nancy shook her head, you'd better leave it to Randall. He's your son. He'll take care of everything. When Randall returned, I discreetly turned on the tape recorder in my robe pocket. He and Nancy had secluded themselves in the kitchen, ostensibly to prepare dinner, but really to discuss future plans. I asked Ashton to help me pack the books in the study, and I crept quietly to the kitchen door. The loan has been approved, Nancy said in a low voice. As soon as the house is officially ours, we can get the money. The realtor says an interested buyer is willing to pay 15% above market value if the deal goes through quickly. What about a trust fund for Dad? Randall asked. We promised to set up a fund to cover his expenses at the residence. Nancy laughed. Randy, honey, why should we spend money on a trust fund when your father's not likely to live more than a year or two? You can see his condition. He's deteriorating. Still, Nancy? Randall's voice sounded uncertain. He's my father. I don't want him to be unsupported. Don't be silly, Nancy cut him off. Golden Years provides basic care as part of the insurance. That's enough. And we need the money and for the new business, for the vacation we've been dreaming of, for Ashton's education. So, Mom, speaking of Ashton, Randall lowered his voice even more. He hasn't been himself lately, always defending his grandfather, asking questions about our plans. You don't think he suspects something? He's just a sentimental boy, Nancy said. After Ambrose moves in, he'll calm down, especially when he finds out that part of the money will go to his education. I quietly returned to the study, where Ashton was methodically packing books. They're planning to use the money from the sale of the house for their business, I whispered, and they say I won't live more than 2 years. Ashton's face contorted with anger and pain. How can they? It's disgusting. Hush, I put my hand on his shoulder. Let's keep playing our parts. Soon they'll get what they deserve. After lunch, Nancy announced that we had to go to the bank. I agreed with the look of a man who doesn't quite know what's going on, but trusts his loved ones. At the bank, the manager met us in a separate office. Nancy introduced me as her father-in-law, who needs help with financial management due to declining health. Do you have power of attorney? The manager asked. Nancy pulled out some papers. Deal. Here, a power of attorney signed by Mr. Hemfield giving his son Randall Hemfield the authority to manage his accounts. The manager scrutinized the document. Everything looks in order, he said at last. What exactly do you want to do? We'd like to add Randall as a co-owner of the account, Nancy explained, and perhaps withdraw some amount to cover the cost of moving Mr. Hemfield into a nursing home. I sat there with an absent look, occasionally asking where we were and why we had come. Randall looked uncomfortable, but Nancy was in her element, confidently handling the situation. How much do you want to withdraw? The manager asked. $50,000 to start, Nancy answered without hesitation. It's a lot of money to move in and set up. The manager raised his eyebrows but said nothing. He began the paperwork to change the status of the account. Mr. Hemfield, he turned to me, do you realize that you are adding your son as a co-owner of the account? That means that he will have the same rights to the funds as you do. I blinked a few times, then nodded slowly. Yes, of course. Randall is my son. I trust him. And you agree to the withdrawal of $50,000 today? 50? I acted surprised. Why so much? Nancy quickly interjected. For your move, Ambrose, remember we talked about it. The residence, the new furniture, the clothes. Oh yes, I nodded. Of course, of course. If you think it's necessary. The manager looked concerned but continued with the paperwork. I signed them with a trembling hand, making sure the signature was different from my usual one, just as I had done with the gift certificate. When we left the bank, Nancy was in high spirits. Randall seemed depressed, but didn't mind when my wife suggested we stop by the car dealership just to see the new models. I've been wanting to upgrade my car for a long time, she said, and now that the financial issues are settled, why not treat yourself? At the dealership, Nancy went straight for the expensive models. I sat on the sidelines, ostensibly napping in a chair, but watching intently. Ashton joined me, his face a mixture of disgust and disbelief. They take your money and then they're going to spend it on a car? He whispered. That's insanity. It's greed, I replied quietly. But don't worry, everything is going according to plan. Nancy picked out an expensive SUV and began discussing the terms of the purchase with the sales manager. Randall stood nearby, nodding occasionally, but it was obvious that he wasn't the one making the decisions. We can put down a deposit today, Nancy said, and the rest of the money in 2 weeks when the sale of the property is finalized. What property? The manager asked. My father-in-law is moving into a nursing home, she explained with a smile. We are selling his house. The deal is in the final stages. I squeezed Ashton's hand, letting him know he should remain calm. My grandson was ready to jump up and tell his parents what he thought of them. After the car dealership, Nancy wanted to stop by the jewelry store. There she tried on expensive necklaces and bracelets, telling Randall that she could finally afford decent jewelry. Toward evening, we returned to my house where Verity was waiting for us. Upon seeing her neighbor, Nancy frowned. Alexi, what are you doing here? She asked sharply. I invited Verity for tea, I replied with an innocent look. She's a good friend of mine. I wanted to say goodbye before I left. Nancy reluctantly agreed that Verity could stay for tea. While Randall continued packing and Ashton helped him, Verity and I sat on the veranda, and Nancy paced nervously nearby, clearly disturbed by our conversation. How are the preparations for the move going? Verity asked loud enough for Nancy to hear. Good, I sighed. It's sad to leave home, though. I've longed to live here for the rest of my days. Are you sure that's necessary? Verity cast an expressive glance in Nancy's direction. Alas, I shook my head with a sad look. My son and his wife think I need supervision. Perhaps they are right. I am becoming forgetful, absent-minded. Nancy moved closer, making no secret of her displeasure at Verity's presence. Ambrose needs professional care, she said coldly. It's dangerous to live alone at his age. I understand, Verity nodded. What will happen to the house? We'll sell it, Nancy answered quickly. It's unsustainable to keep an empty house. And the money from the sale? Not sure it will be used to keep Ambrose comfortable in the residence. Nancy smiled, but her eyes remained cold. His well-being is our top priority. Verity nodded, but I could tell by the look in her eyes that she didn't believe a word of it. When Verity left, Nancy voiced her displeasure. Why are you telling outsiders about our family affairs, Ambrose? She spoke through her teeth. It's nobody's business. Verity is my friend, I feigned offense. I wanted to say goodbye. Next time, consult with us before you invite guests, Nancy said. Time is limited, and we have a lot to do before you move in. That night, when Randall and Nancy left, promising to return tomorrow morning to finish packing, Ashton stayed with me. He insisted, telling his parents that he wanted to spend one last night with his grandfather before he moved. They're horrible people, Ashton said when we were alone. Especially Mom. How can she do that to you? Don't judge them too harshly, I sighed. Greed is a powerful motivator. It eclipses reason, conscience, even kinship. But Dad, he's your son. How can he be a part of this? Randall's always been weak-willed, I shook my head. Even as a child, he was easily influenced by stronger personalities, and Nancy's a strong person, no doubt about it. We sat up late into the night, discussing a plan of action for the next day. Ashton was determined to help me confront his parents, even if it meant conflict with them. In the morning, Verity and Gerald arrived. We went over all the evidence we'd collected, the taped conversations, the bank records, a copy of the forged power of attorney Nancy had used to access my accounts. Impressive, Gerald said, looking through the materials. With this, We can easily prove the invalidity of the gift deed and attempted fraud. I contacted the manager of Golden Years, Verity said. Mr. Pratt is willing to testify about how Nancy presented the situation and what arguments she used to expedite your move. Good, I nodded. Now we need to prepare for their arrival. They'll be here in an hour. We set up the cameras and recorders so that we could record everything that would happen. Gerald and Verity were to wait in the next room until a certain point. At exactly 10 o'clock in the morning, Randall's car pulled up. I met them at the door, again playing the role of the disoriented old man. Good morning, I smiled uncertainly. Are you following me? Yes, Dad, Randall patted my shoulder. Today is your big day, moving into your new home. Nancy took a quick look around the living room. I see you're almost ready. We just need to pack the last few things and then we can go. Where are we going? I asked with feigned confusion. Nancy rolled her eyes. To the Golden Years, Ambrose. To a residence for senior citizens. We've discussed this 100 times. Oh yes, of course, I nodded. I forgot. Old age is no fun. While Randall finished packing my things, Nancy pulled some more papers out of her purse. Ambrose, we need you to sign these papers before you leave, she said, laying them out on the table. They're formalities for your stay in the residence. I took the papers and pretended to read them, holding them close to my eyes. What are these? I can't make it out without my glasses. It's an authorization to sell the house, Nancy explained impatiently, and the paperwork to close your current bank account. Everything will be transferred to an account managed by Randall. Why close my account? I frowned. Didn't we make Randall a co-owner yesterday? Nancy looked a little embarrassed. Yes, but it would make it more convenient to manage your finances. One account instead of two. I slowly looked up from the papers. Or maybe it's just more convenient to embezzle my money that way. Nancy froze. What did you say? I asked. I repeated in a normal, firm voice, dropping the mask of senility. Are you closing my account to make it easier to embezzle my money? Nancy recoiled, her eyes widening with shock. Ambrose, you're confused. It's your fortune. My condition is fine, I straightened up. So is my memory. I remember every word you said about how you were going to dispose of my house and my money. Every plan you made, every lie you told. Randall walked out of the bedroom, hearing raised voices. What's going on? Your father's out of his mind, Nancy said quickly. He's having some kind of paranoid attack. No, Randall, I shook my head. I'm completely sane, and I know all about your plans to put me in a nursing home, sell my house, and embezzle the money. Randall turned pale. Dad, we just want you to be taken care of by professionals. Shush, honey. Really? I grinned. What about the new car Nancy picked out yesterday? Or the jewelry? Is that taking care of me too? Where did you? Nancy started, but I interrupted her. I have tapes of your conversations, I said, where you discuss how you're going to spend my money, where Nancy says I'm unlikely to live more than a year or two, where you plan to use the proceeds from the sale of the house for your business instead of keeping me in the residence. Nancy rushed to leave, but the door opened and Verity and Gerald appeared on the threshold. Going somewhere, Mrs. Hemfield? Verity asked calmly. Who are you? Nancy stepped back. What are you doing in this house? I'm Mr. Hemfield's lawyer, replied Gerald. Son, and Mrs. Crawford is his attorney, according to the new legal documents. What new legal documents? Randall intervened, confused. The ones that protect me from people like you, I answered, looking my son straight in the eye. The week after Randall and Nancy's revelation was spent in intense preparation, Verity and Gerald helped me gather the last of the legal documents, file the fraud charges, and prepare the final judgment that would set the record straight. I insisted that the meeting take place at my house, my property, where years of family memories had been made that Randall and Nancy had so easily betrayed. The morning of the deciding day was clear and sunny, an ironic contrast to the gravity of the upcoming conversation. I woke up early, feeling strangely calm. The pain of the betrayal hadn't gone away, but the determination to defend myself and punish the perpetrators gave me strength. Are you sure you want to do it this way? Verity asked as she, Gerald, and I arranged the documents on the living room table. There's no need for a personal confrontation. Your lawyer could... No, I shook my head. They'd have to hear it from me, in person, to see for themselves the consequences of their actions. Gerald nodded understandingly. Public exposure had its value, especially for those who thought their victim was too weak to defend themselves. At 11 in the morning, Ashton's car pulled up, an older sedan he'd bought with money from a part-time job in college. His grandson entered the house, tense but determined. "They're coming," he reported. "Mom was furious about your demand to meet, but Dad insisted. He thinks you're going to apologize and agree to their terms." I snorted. Randall had always been an optimist, though in this case, it bordered on self-delusion. "I recorded their conversation in the car on the way to your place 3 days ago." Ashton held out his smartphone to me. "Listen to it." Nancy's voice came out of the speaker. "He's a stubborn old man, but he'll give in sooner or later. Where can he go? Living alone at his age is dangerous, and the residence offers all the services he needs. We just have to be more persistent." "I don't like pushing my father," Randall objected. "Shy, he seemed really upset last time." "He's manipulating you, Randy," Nancy replied, "using your filial affection. But we both know he needs professional care. And the sooner we sell the house, the sooner we can start a new life. What if he refuses to move? Then we'll file for a declaration of incapacity. We have enough evidence of his absent-mindedness and disorientation." I turned off the tape, feeling a wave of anger rising inside. "They're not giving up," I shook my head. "Despite the exposure, they're still planning to put me in a nursing home and sell my house." "Don't worry, Grandpa," Ashton squeezed my shoulder. "We won't let them do that." At 12 o'clock, Randall's black SUV appeared in the driveway. My son and his wife got out of the car, displaying opposite moods. Randall looked uncertain and guilty, Nancy determined and irritated. I met them at the door dressed in my best suit, the one I wore to important college events. Standing up straight, I felt not like a 74-year-old man, but like a man ready to fight for his freedom and dignity. "Come in," I said dryly. "We're going to have a serious conversation." Nancy looked around the living room, noticing Verity, Gerald, and Ashton sitting at a table with papers spread out on it. "What's this?" she frowned. "We thought this was going to be a family meeting." "It was," I nodded. "It's just that my understanding of family had changed in recent weeks." Randall looked confused. "Dad, if this is about the nursing home again—" "Sit down," I interrupted, pointing to the chairs across from me, "and listen to me." They sat down reluctantly. I took a seat at the head of the table, feeling like a judge passing judgment. 3 months ago, I began, looking them in the eye, I bought this house, my dream house, the place where I planned to spend the rest of my life remembering Elizabeth and our happy years together. I paused. Almost immediately afterward, you began an operation to seize my property and imprison me. "That's not true," Nancy was indignant. "We're just concerned for your health and safety." "Please don't lie," I raised my hand. "I have recordings of your conversations. This one, for example, made 3 days ago." I turned on the tape provided by Ashton. As the voices sounded, Nancy's face paled with rage, and Randall's head lowered further and further. "This is illegal," Nancy hissed when the tape ended. "You had no right to record our private conversations." "Actually, I did," Gerald interjected. "In the state of Texas, the law allows a conversation to be recorded if one party is aware of it and agrees. In this case, Ashton was that party." Nancy turned to her stepson with an expression of utter betrayal. You were spying on us." "I was protecting Grandpa," Ashton replied firmly, "from your manipulation and greed." "But that's not all," I continued, pulling out other documents. "Here's a copy of the deed of gift on the house, which you forced me to sign under duress. Here's the power of attorney with a forged signature that you used to access my bank accounts. And here's the bank records of the $50,000 withdrawal from my account, the money that was supposed to go toward my settling in at the nursing home, but instead was spent on a down payment for a new car." Randall finally looked up. "Dad, I can explain." "Don't bother," I shook my head. "I know everything. I know how you planned to sell my house right after I moved into the golden years. I know that you calculated that I was unlikely to live more than a year or two. I know about the loan you were going to take out against a house you didn't even own yet." Nancy jumped up. "This is all because of her," She pointed at Verity. That woman turned you against us. She wants your money. Verity calmly endured the attack. Mr. Hemfield is smart enough to recognize lies and treachery on his own. I only helped him protect his legal rights. I raised my hand, calling for silence. Now for the consequences, I said, pulling out another document. The deed of gift you forced me to sign is null and void. The power of attorney you forged is also null and void. The bank has already been informed of the fraud, and the money will be returned to my account. Nancy's face contorted with anger. You can't do that. We have a legal right. You have no rights to my property, I cut her off. But that's not all. I took the last document from the table. It's a new will, drawn up and certified last week. It transfers my house and most of my property to a trust managed by an independent trustee. A trust? Randall looked confused. Yes, I nodded. A fund from which I can draw for my own use, but which is protected from any attempted seizure. And when I die, the house and the remaining assets will go to Ashton, the sole beneficiary. Nancy turned pale. You're disinheriting Randall? Your only son? I'm protecting my estate from those who tried to take it away during my lifetime, I replied. And I'm securing the future of the only family member who has shown honesty and integrity. Randall finally found his voice. Dad, I know we made a mistake, but we were really worried about you. The life of a lonely elderly man is full of risks. Don't lie now, son. I looked him straight in the eye. You weren't worried about me. You were worried about my money and my house. You let greed and weakness of character overshadow your duty as a son. Randall shrank back, unable to find the words to justify himself. Nancy, however, was not about to give up. We're going to contest the will, she declared. We'll prove that you were incapacitated when you signed it. Gerald grinned. Good luck with that. We have medical reports from 3 independent specialists confirming Mr. Hemfield's full capacity, plus video footage of him making and signing the will, which clearly shows that he is acting knowingly and voluntarily. In addition, I added, trying to contest the will only make your situation worse. Gerald has already prepared statements to the police about fraud, forgery, and attempted misappropriation of property. If you insist on continuing the conflict, those statements will be filed. Randall turned pale. You're going to sue me? Your own son? I hope it won't come to that, I replied. But it depends on what you do next. There was a heavy silence. Nancy sat with her arms crossed over her chest, a look of impotent rage on her face. Randall looked broken, realizing the magnitude of his betrayal and its consequences. What about the down payment on the car? Nancy finally asked. And the other expenses we've already made, counting on my money, I finished for her. That's your problem. I'm not going to reimburse expenses made as a result of fraud. Shauna, so, but we don't have enough money, Nancy exclaimed. We were counting on selling the house. You may have to reconsider your financial plans, Verity said dryly, and your lifestyle. Ashton, who had been silent until then, rose from his seat. Mom, Dad, he said firmly, I've decided to move in with Grandpa. I'm going to live with him and help around the house while I continue my college studies. What? Nancy stared at her son. You can't do that. I can, Ashton replied calmly. I'm 18. I'm an adult. And I prefer to live with a man who teaches me honesty and dignity, not manipulation and greed. That was the final blow. Nancy jumped up, grabbed her purse, and headed for the door. We'll come back to this conversation, she tossed over her shoulder. When you all come to your senses. Randall rose slowly, looking 10 years older. Dad, he stammered, unable to find the words. I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything, I said. Deeds speak louder than words, Randall, and your deeds say all I need to know. He nodded, lowering his head, and followed his wife. Through the window, I watched them argue fiercely as they got into the car. Then the SUV sped off and disappeared around the corner. There was silence in the room. Gerald was gathering papers. Verity was staring out the window. Ashton sat next to me, putting his hand on my shoulder in silent support. Are you okay? Verity asked quietly. I took a deep breath. I don't know. On one hand, I'd won, saved the house, protected my money, secured my future. On the other hand, I lost my son, though maybe I'd lost him a long time ago. I just didn't want to admit it. He made his choice, Verity said softly. Now he had to live with the consequences. Gerald closed his briefcase. Legally, it's settled. The deed of gift has been revoked. The house is protected by a trust. The new will is in force. If they try to contest anything, we have all the evidence we need to prove their fraudulent actions. I nodded, feeling not so much triumph as fatigue and sadness. Thank you both. Without your help, I might be sitting in the golden years right now, staring out the barred window. When Gerald and Verity left, Ashton and I stayed in the living room. My grandson brought us tea and turned on an old vinyl record player, a gift from Elizabeth for our 30th anniversary. Jazz came on, melodic, a little sad, perfect for the moment. So, are you sure you want to live with me? I asked Ashton. It's a big decision. Absolutely sure, he nodded. College dorms are noisy, and it's impossible to concentrate on your studies. Your place is quiet, peaceful, and has a library. Besides, I'll feel better knowing that you're okay. I'm not that helpless, I smiled. I know, Ashton smiled back. You've proven that. But two people in the house are better than one. Let's keep each other company. We moved Ashton's things into the guest bedroom. By late afternoon, it had become a young man's room, with books, a laptop, pictures of friends. I watched him settle in, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and hope. After dinner, we sat down to play chess at the very mahogany table Nancy was so eager to sell. Ashton made good moves. I had taught him the game since he was a boy, but he was still inferior in experience. Grandfather, he said, looking thoughtfully at the board, do you think they'll ever realize what they've done? I shook my head. I don't know, Ashton. Self-deception is a powerful force. Maybe they still think they acted in my best interest, that I'm just a stubborn old man who doesn't realize his own good. How can they think that after all the evidence? Oh, people believe what they want to believe. I made a move. To admit the truth would mean for them to admit their own greed and heartlessness. It's too painful. And you? Could you ever forgive them? I wondered. The question of forgiveness was a difficult one. My son's betrayal had left a deep wound that was unlikely to ever fully heal. I don't know, I answered honestly. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or reconciliation. It's more like an inner release of anger and pain. Perhaps in time I'll be able to let go of those feelings, but trust them again? No. Ashton nodded, understanding. He made a move, and the game continued in cozy silence. At night, as the house drifted into slumber, I stood at the window for a long time, looking up at the stars. Thoughts of Randall, of his childhood, of our relationship over the decades, filled me with bitterness. Where had I gone wrong? What could I have done differently? These questions will probably haunt me for the rest of my days. But in the morning, waking up to the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the sound of soft music from the kitchen, I felt a glimmer of hope. Ashton was already up, making breakfast, whistling something under his breath. Good morning, Grandpa, he smiled when he saw me. How did you sleep? Not bad. I sat down at the table, taking a cup of coffee. And you? Great. I never slept so well in the dorms. It's too noisy. We ate breakfast, discussing plans for the day. Ashton was going to college for a lecture, and I was going to the garden, where I'd been meaning to plant new roses for a long time. You know, I said when he was about to leave, despite everything that's happened, I don't regret buying this house. It really was a new beginning for me, just not in the way I expected. Ashton smiled. For me too, Grandpa. For me too. As I watched him drive away in his old sedan, I thought about the irony of life. I had lost a son, but gained a new bond with my grandson. Lost illusions, but gained clarity. Lost a piece of the past, but gained a chance at a new future. At 74, I was beginning a new chapter of life, with the bitterness of betrayal in my heart, yes, but also with a determination not to let that bitterness poison my remaining years. With gratitude for loyal friends, for my grandson, for the home that had become my fortress, I headed out to the garden with gardening tools and rose seedlings. Today was a good day for planting, a day for new beginnings. The sun was shining brightly, the ground was warm and moist from the recent rain, and I was, against all odds, free.